Yo, what's going on everyone? Nathan here. So since this is going to be my first real video since coming back to the YouTube scene, I think it's only fitting that I make this about an iPad, as that is where my whole channel started off with. I absolutely love the iPad, and I would even recommend it over any laptop if you're a college student because it's that capable of a device. For the past 4 years, I've had the 2020 11-inch iPad Pro. I've held off on getting a new one because I wanted there to be a large enough jump for when I finally upgraded, and I think the changes that come with the new M4 iPad Pro might make it worth the upgrade for me. So I recently picked this up and the new Apple Pencil Pro, and in this video, I'm going to give you a complete overview of everything you can expect with these two new products from Apple. So let's get right into it. Let's start off with the unboxing of the new iPad Pro. First off, I absolutely love the design of both of these boxes, and if you didn't already know, this wallpaper actually spells out Pro, which is a really nice subtle touch. So opening up the iPad box, you'll get, of course, the iPad, the user manual, which actually does not include Apple stickers anymore. I know that's actually a huge L, but I guess to reduce the use of plastics in their packaging, I guess it kind of makes sense why they're removing it, but just sad to see overall. Behind those, you'll find a 20-watt USB-C power adapter, and then below that, there's going to be a black USB-C braided cable if you got the new space black colorway. If not, it's going to be a regular white version. And I do really like this black cable. It looks very sleek. So the specific model iPad I ended up getting is the 11-inch 256GB version in, like I said before, the space black colorway. I think the space black color is very nice and probably one of my new favorite colorways from Apple. It's definitely not black, but as you can see, it's much darker than my space gray MacBook Pro. And one thing I want to point out that I'm sure you've probably already noticed is that this colorway does pick up smudges and fingerprints very easily, way more so than their space gray version or even the silver version. So just something to keep note of. You're probably gonna have to clean this more often than not, but also I would expect most of you to rock this with a case most of the time, so you probably won't have to worry about it, but it is definitely something if you go caseless with your iPad, you're gonna have to clean it a little more often. Taking a look around the iPad, not much has changed in terms of button layout since mine in 2020. The top right is where you'll find the power button. On the left side, you find your volume rockers. The speaker grills are found on both the top and bottom, which support 4 internal speakers. They still sound very, very good, especially for a tablet this size. And you'll find the USB-C port at the bottom. One welcome change to the Pro line is that the front-facing camera has been moved over to the right side, just under where the Apple Pencil attaches. As most people tend to use their iPads in the landscape orientation, this will make it easier for Face ID and makes the center stage feature for the front-facing camera much better as it's now centered in the iPad. These are also Apple's thinnest products ever, coming in at just 53mm thick for the 11-inch and 51mm thick for the 13-inch. With how thin they are, they've also been able to decrease the weight, so the 11-inch now weighs just under 1 pound and the 13-inch is now 1.28 pounds. So no matter how you view Apple products, or if you're even a fan of the iPads in general, it really is just like an engineering feat at how thin they can make these products while still maintaining the same battery life and performance year after year. This is incredibly thin now, almost scary thin, like makes you wonder about durability performance for this. But just overall, absolutely amazing engineering going on from Apple here. Moving over to the display of the iPad, this is probably the most impressive part of this device, and Apple's even claiming that this is the most advanced display ever made, which is quite the claim, but I actually can't really debate it at all, as this display is absolutely gorgeous. Apple is calling this display their Ultra Retina XDR display, which has their new tandem OLED technology. This utilizes 2 OLED panels on top of each other to help brighten up the entire display from corner to corner. It allows for the screen to reach a max brightness of 1000 nits and a peak brightness at 1600 nits. This display has a resolution of 2420 by 1668 at 264 pixels per inch. This does have Apple's ProMotion technology, so you're gonna get the full 120 Hz refresh rate, buttery smooth scrolling, and you also get everything else you expect from a top-of-the-line Apple display. There just isn't really anything to hate about this display, and now since they made it OLED, you're finally gonna get those deep blacks and colors that just pop off the screen. This is a super nice setup for any artist or video editor out there. Similar to Apple's Pro Display XDR, you can also now get this with a nano texture option to help scatter ambient light for less glare. However, this option is only available for the 1 and 2 terabyte versions of this model, so that's kind of sus right there. This would be a nice addition for anyone writing on their iPads all the time, like let's say in a classroom, but when I was back in college and I was writing on my iPad, in almost every single classroom I was in. Some classrooms definitely affected it more than others with like the overhead lights. Really depended on the setup of the room that I was in, but overall, I don't think that you need this, especially for that price. I recommend just going on Amazon, getting some cheap little matte screen protector. One, you'll be able to change that out here and there whenever you feel like it. It's not nearly as expensive. You're pretty much gonna get the same functionality out of it, and you also don't have to worry about any sort of durability issues with this. As with the Pro Display XDR, you're only able to clean that screen with a specific microfiber cloth that Apple provides you. And if you use anything else, you could potentially damage the screen. And for a product worth this much, you definitely don't want to do that or mess around with it. So just spend like $10 for like a matte screen protector and skip the nano texture. Moving over to the processor, this iPad now has the new M4 chip inside of it, which has Apple's 2nd generation 3nm technology. So I'm gonna put up on the screen right now all the geeky specs that you could want to know about this new processor. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out for myself why you would need something so powerful in a tablet like this. So essentially what all these new cores mean that they're adding inside of this M4 chip, it's pretty much gonna be 50% more powerful than the M2 chip, which was in the previous iPad Pro model. So one common trend that seems to follow the iPad Pro year after year is that the software is usually lacking way behind the hardware potential. So the hardware that are built into these iPads is way stronger than anything that you could probably need for the iPad. I know for the vast majority of people, this is going to be used for note-taking, drawing, art, browsing the web, and media consumption, and you're never going to notice a difference from the M4 and let's say the M1 chip from 3 years ago. So now moving over to the cameras, and let's be honest, you probably shouldn't be using the cameras on your iPad, as the one on your phone is probably way better than this. This camera module is going from 2 cameras down to 1, so they're removing the ultra-wide camera, and that second black circle is where you'll find the LiDAR sensor is housed now. But the only camera you'll find on this module now is a 12 megapixel wide camera at f1.8. For videos, you can record 4K at 24 all the way up to 60 frames per second, and 1080p up to 60 frames per second as well. So the front-facing camera that I mentioned before, which is again moved over to the right side of the iPad, is a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera at 1080p. This ultra wide front-facing camera is going to make it so much nicer for FaceTime calls, and also center stage, which will actually crop in the video and kind of follow you around as you move around the room. And it's definitely just a nice feature to have for those FaceTime calls. And I really do like the center stage option. So battery life, Apple is claiming you're gonna have the exact same 10 hours on these iPads, even though they're now much thinner and also running the more powerful M4 processor. But this new M4 chip is also much more efficient, which is why it balances out to having about the same battery life. I didn't have a problem with the thickness of the 2020 iPad Pro, and I probably would have just maintained that same thickness for more battery. I think probably more people would do that, but I think Apple definitely wanted to like distinguish and also like run up the headline of their thinnest device ever made. I'm pretty sure it's only thinner than one of their iPods by just a millimeter or 2, something like that. But I think they just wanted the headline. I would have taken the couple extra millimeters of thickness for extra battery life, but it's fine. 10 hours battery life is very good, and you're probably not gonna run out of it on a day-to-day use unless you're doing like heavy taxing on some big application. Let's talk about the Apple Pencil Pro real quick. Unboxing it is very standard, and you only get the user manual and the pencil itself. It looks exactly the same as the previous generation, but now it has the Pencil Pro text at the end. There are pretty much only 2 new additions that make this Pro now. There is a haptic motor inside, and when you squeeze the pencil, you feel the haptic feedback, and this will also toggle different tools depending on which application you're in. This can actually be a huge time saver for artists out there who are constantly switching between tools while creating. I know that when I used to draw and note take on my iPad, I would have absolutely loved this feature, and I can definitely see it being very, very useful for a lot of people out there. This haptic motor now also allows the Pencil Pro to work with Find My, and this is a super nice addition as it's a pencil and people lose pencils all the time, especially at school, so it's definitely nice to have that feature built into this. And lastly, this has a new gyroscope, which makes this pencil rotation sensitive. It is a really accurate and awesome looking feature, again, for artists, I think, but I personally don't think I'll have a use for it. One slight detail that I absolutely love is this rotation with the hover feature. As you hover the pencil over the screen, you'll see a virtually generated shadow of the tool you have selected, and it will also rotate as you rotate the Pencil Pro. It's so subtle and pretty much virtually useless, but it's such an Apple thing to do, and I really do like that subtle touch about it, especially how it changes the shape of the shadow based on the tool. It's just a sick little thing and kind of a flex from Apple. So unfortunately, and this actually does really suck from Apple, but this new Pencil Pro is only going to be compatible with the two new iPads released in 2024, so the iPad Pro and iPad Air. Not only will you have to buy this new pencil, which is starting at the same price as the last one, you're also gonna have to buy a whole new iPad. And that honestly just sucks. Like, I know that this doesn't quite magnetize on the same way because they had to move around the magnets to fit in that new camera on the side. Even though it doesn't quite fit there, they should have still at least made it compatible just for those people who like just keep this at home and just create and draw with it. It definitely sucks from Apple for doing that and making that kind of choice. So let's quickly talk about price. The base M4 iPad Pro is gonna start at $999. And like I just said, the base Apple Pencil Pro is gonna cost $129. My honest recommendation for these products is if you already have an iPad Pro from, let's say, 2020 or newer, then you probably don't need these. Unless you're a professional artist who will utilize the rotation of the pencil or save a bunch of time with that new squeeze feature, or if you're a video and photo editor who uses the iPad as their main editing device, then this will still function exactly the same as the other iPad Pro you may already have. The OLED display is a nice to have, but on an average use, I really don't notice too much of a difference, and I only really see it when I'm comparing it side by side with my iPad Pro from 2020. So unless you fit into one of those two categories, or if the iPad is like your main creation device, then I would say save your money and wait for some sort of bigger upgrade, bigger update in the future with some features that will actually make this feel different on a day-to-day use, where you actually feel the upgrades of it. So that's gonna wrap up my complete overview of the M4 iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil Pro. For me personally, I think I'm gonna be returning this. I don't see much of a difference between this and my 2020 iPad Pro, as I just use that as like a third monitor kind of in my setup. But besides that, it's just not really worth it for me. So I'm gonna be returning it. As much as I love brand new spanking Apple devices, I think this is just a little too high of an asking price for what it's offering me over my other iPad. So that's gonna be the video. If you enjoyed it, then please don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe. And as always, have a great day, everyone. Cheers.